Kevin.
I'm just going to go on to Zoom.
Good evening.
122 so far.
Hello, everybody.
Evening, David. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks.
Understated as always. David.
Oh, they've driven it dressed out, haven't they?
Hi, Elaine. Hi, Gordon.
Evening all.
Nice to see you, Alan and Robert.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Brian.
Say that square. The top. Did it not say video? I've gone into video. Have you? Look along the bottom, the video.
Zoom is Tammy Scotland.
No, that's mute. Not video.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you.
Hardly anyone.
Great
6 pages. Somebody else got to
Hi, how are you?
You can see yourself.
see it. This is for fun. Outside of
Yes, yes, yes.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Cheers, Jill.
Cheers, Jill.
Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jill. So David there as well.
Wow.
Harry.
You're the only one that Richard can't get.
Hi, Mr. Linus.
I've lost Jill.
We just see.
Oh, I see them now.
Ellie, you look like a tablecloth.
Very nice.
Hello, everybody.
Greetings from hell,
Hey, I'm seeing you ready.
I hope we've got a chairman. It sounds like a right gag of
Listen, Jeff.
Glen's voice I can hear.
His bubble.
Right.
Hello, John.
Right, we put down to gallery, but maybe.
Can you hear me, Eddie?
I can hear you, Michael.
I'll just leave that. See, we always appear.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural 41 Club Burns Supper. So, Meal Fa Tachuk Alaba, So greetings from 1,000, greetings from Scotland. Wherever you are in Scotland, or whether it be in England, Ireland, Wales, and everyone else from further afield, welcome and greetings from Scotland. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kevin Stewart, and I'm the Region 2 National Councillor for Scotland South, and also caretaker National Councillor for Region 1, and I'm going to be your Master of Ceremonies for tonight. So before we start, just a couple of things I need to let you know. Just to what we call Zoom etiquette. Obviously, while the speakers are speaking, you know, I appreciate that there's no noises in the background, there's no talking, no TVs on the background, etc., etc., etc. Just to make you aware, I have a little friend here. This little friend is called Nessie. Say hello to Nessie. And Nessie will be, along with myself, will be telling the Sergeant at Arms about anyone who's bad behaviour on the night, and later on the night, the Sergeant at Arms will be fining people accordingly. So you have been warned. So if you do want to chat to people, please use the chat function. It'd be great to know where you all are from. So again, if you could just basically say your club name, where you're from, that'd be great. That'd be great. So thank you for that. So without further ado, if we can, I'm going to ask that we pipe in the National President, please. Thank you. Thanks to our piper, Blair Scott. Over to you, National President Peter Good.
Good evening. See you, Jeremy. Welcome, lads and lasses, to another great Connects evening. Just before we start, I'd just like to make an announcement for next week. Next week, we're back on our usual night, the Thursday night, with a fantastic night for all you cricket fans lined up. We've got Jonathan Agnew and Jeff Miller, who will be giving us a great evening talking about cricket. So I hope you can all join us next Thursday at 7:30. That's enough of the advertising. I'm going to immediately hand back now to our Scottish President, Kev, who's not half the man he used to be. He's slimmed right down. He's trying to pull a bird up there called Nicola. So I'll now hand over for a great evening, Kevin. Cheers,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Peter. Moving on. Obviously, Burns is well known for putting word to prose and having some interesting thoughts in life as well. And but before we kick off anything, the most important thing before anyone eats is to say the Selkirk Grace. So I would like to introduce to say the Selkirk Grace from Troon 41 Club, Ian Goldie. Ian is the oldest member of Troon 41 Club. So over to you, Ian. Right.
Where's he gone?
Ian's still muted.
Right, can we unmute Ian?
All right.
Ian, you're good to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So, I'll start again about the story of the Selkirk Grace. It is attributed to Robert Burns, and he collected it and used it on many occasions, including a visit to the Earl of Selkirk in his Kirkcudbright home on the Solway Firth. Although it was written over 200 years ago, the words and the sentiment are still relevant. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the Selkirk Grace. Some hae meat and canna eat, and some would eat that want it. But we hae meat and we can eat, and say the Lord be thanked. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ian. Of course, that was Burns writing that version over 200 years ago. So to bring us right up to the modern day, here's a modern version of the Selkirk Grace. Some hae meat and canna eat, and some would eat that want it. But we hae meat and we can eat, and say let the Lord be thanked. But some hate meat and grit and weep, resisting all coercion. So bless the tatties, bless the neeps, and the vegetarian version. Then filled with fruit so filled in vine, and feeling fair frae fisky, the one who water turned to wine would ask to bless the whiskey. Thank you. Gents and ladies, can we please be upstanding as we pipe the haggis in? And once again, thank you to our piper, Blair Scott, for the piping in of the haggis. I appreciate there's a lot of people on the call, probably a lot of people who haven't seen or talked to each other in a while. So we're just going to have a 5-minute break to allow those who want to go get something to drink, maybe start eating. So I say we'll resume the evening in 5 minutes at 10 to 8. We'll see you then.
Let's go. Hi, Gordon. Elaine. Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Evening, everyone.
Hi, Peter. Now I'm muted. Yeah.
Hi, I hope Lucy says hi too.
Do you know anybody? Say hello.
Good evening, all.
Yeah. See you again. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Go, Jeff. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Bill.
Hi, David. Hi, Dave. Hi, Brian.
Hiya.
I'm sure everybody.
Hi, Mr. Lord. How we doing?
Good. I'm sure you, yeah.
Can you speak?
Thanks, Karen. Did a great job so far.
Hello, Bob and Sally.
Do you know anybody?
Hello, Peter and Paula.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, David.
Hey all.
Jill.
Lord, my bottle's empty. I drank mine long ago.
Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Alan.
Hi, Harry.
Everybody's names. 10 minutes. I'll put it in.
Hi, Mark.
Shout hello. Hello, Bob and Sally.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jamie.
Yeah,
Jim and Vicky. Hello, Jim and Vicky.
Salute in Spain.
Cheers, Kathy. Come on, share them. Cheers.
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 Hi, Jeff.
Louder.
Is that you, Peter?
Hello, Bob and Sally. Hearing you loud and clear.
Hey, Richard. Hi, here. Somebody said Richard. Hi, everybody. Mr. President.
Greetings from Seven Hills.
You're laughing at?
His hat.
Linda, you've disappeared.
I'm here.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening, Brian Forster.
Cheers, all.
Everybody eating.
Hello, Peter and Paula.
Hi, Jim.
Hello, Richard.
Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce Blair the Beard Forrest, who is going to carry out address to the haggis. I've known Blair from my tabling days, and to say that Blair is instantly recognisable all over the tabling in 41 world is a statement in itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, from Royal Deeside 41 Club, Blair Forrest, and address to the haggis. Hopefully he'll be there. He's gone to rescue the haggis.
I think he's a bit shy, clearly.
Oh, here he is. He's back. And he's saying,
and he's on mute.
Right, hang on. I will. Give us a minute.
Better.
I was going to say 3 chairs for Blair Forrest, but there's only 1 chair.
Here we go. Yeah, this is what you call one of those Blair, over to you.
Does he know he's muted?
He's still muted.
Unmute.
Is that it now?
Hang on, look.
Yeah, okay. Where you going?
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working. We can hear you.
Working.
Okay. Fair far your honest sonsy face, great chieftain o' the puddin race. A Boonama, you take your place, pinstripe or there. Well are you worthy o' a grace, as long's my hair. The groaning trencher, there you fill. Your parties like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need. While through your pores, the choose to step like amber. His knife, see a rustic labour dict, and cut you up with ready slight. Oh, treasure, your gushing entrails bright, like ony ditch. Oh, what a glorious sight. Water, reeking. Then horn for horn the striction strive, till tap the hindmost on me dry, till other well-swelled kites will lie, are bent like drums, and all great man mislike to arrive. His blanket hums. Is there that our his French ragout, or olio that would star soup, or fricassee with maggots, with perfect scunner. Looks doon, but sneering, scorn for view, on sicker dinner. Poor devil, see him o'er his thrash, as feckless as a withered rush, his spinel shank a gweed whiplash, his neve a knit, through bloody blood a field to dash. Oh, how unfit. But mark, the rustic haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his valley leave a blade, he'll mak it whistle, and leeks and erms and heads will sned like taps of thistle. He powers will mak mankind your care, and dish them out the bill of fare. All Scotland wants nae skinking wear that jokes and luggies. But you wish a grateful prayer. Here, Piper, will you take it round? Cheers.
Cheers.
Blair.
Cheers.
Angela.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Well done. Brilliant.
Well done, Blair. Thank you for that fine rendition. That was absolutely superb. Well done. Enjoy your haggis.
Will do. We'll go and unmute or mute or whatever you're going to do for a second, and I'll cook me tatties.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Blair. Thank you.
No probs.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I say, as that was a fine rendition of Address the Haggis from Mr. Forrest. I say, thank you very much for that, Blair. I say we'll just have just another 5 minutes general around everybody again.
I'll wait until you're back. I didn't want to both of us to disappear. That looks very good.
All right, Joe.
Oh, that was Barry Martin.
Was that?
Oh, the one right top one. That's it.
Okay.
Stop!
That's it.
Oh no.
Bob and Sally.
Stay there. Look.
Write a chat.
Yeah.
Put your picture here. Come and see what I've got. I've just got a big picture of everyone. Is
anybody else worried about the dog?
This is why he's sticking that. You better like that. Come on, me.
Did he say, well, the next
You'll see everything.
I haven't got you. Why is your picture not there?
Time we're gone off.
I'll put it into the whole.
Check the cheese.
The cheese course. We should have the cheese ready for now, didn't we? Oh, there's
Messi will go flying. Get on, while you're in there.
Actually, right. You wouldn't be able to do that. Write the chat, you know?
Hello, Rachel.
She's hot from her job vaccinating everybody.
Oh, well done, Rachel.
The
vaccinations here.
Yeah.
It's just perfectly. You can give me one, Rachel.
If you get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can have one.
Where we got to get to?
Oh, 3 maybe.
Hello, Pastor Macareth.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Mr. President.
Hi, Jay.
Very understated now. Edinburgh.
I'll flick through. Alan.
Just good looking at the.
Sorry?
I can have a bit of waste for you.
Hi, Leslie.
I think you may want to put some.
Because I can't see them, but they got
Ladies and gentlemen, have a bit of patience, please, as I'm about to move on to the next part of the evening. Just remember, as I said before at the start of the evening, Mr. Nessie is watching you all. Please be quiet. It is with great pleasure and to introduce the next speaker who's carrying out immortal memory. Now, I've known the next speaker since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, a family friend of ours.
Kevin, you need to unmute.
Have you muted yourself, mate?
Oh, sorry. Right, okay. Well, I'll go back to start, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. I didn't realise I muted myself, so that's a fine for me straight off. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying the evening tonight, and as we move on to the next the next phase of the proceedings. Just remember, as I said before we started, my friend here, Mr. Nessie, is watching everybody and will be listening as well for any infringements while the speakers are on. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. I've known the next speaker since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. He's a family friend of ours, and as I say, I knew Dave when I was small, and he was in Round Table, and I've obviously met up with him again as I've moved into the 41 Club world. So, ladies and gentlemen, to give the immortal memory of Robbie Burns, I would like to introduce Dave Adams, Chairman of Dundee 41 Club. Dave, over to you. Okay.
Dave, unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Yep, Dave, you ready to go?
Start again.
Yep,
Hold on. Right. Is that okay now? Right. President Feeder, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow 41ers, when I was asked if I would propose this immortal memory at the 41 Club Zoom Burns Supper, I was flattered, honoured, and more than a wee bit scared. Everyone would expect some humour knowing me, but this address by its nature is a tribute to Scotland's national bard and is always delivered in a serious vein and appears to last a very long time. Well, as you can see, I've got the sad face and I have the time, and those who've heard me before will be relieved that I won't be speaking for too long this evening. In any case, wasn't it William Shakespeare who said, "Brevity is the soul of wit"? The same man who went on to write plays that lasted 4.5 hours. Two-faced English bounder he was, but I can't really knock the English tonight because it's a 50-50 job. As an aside, Shakespeare, England's greatest playwright and poet, was born on the 23rd of April, died on the 23rd of April, which is also St. George's Day, and it's not celebrated. In Scotland, would be drunk for a week. Thank you, Kevin, for your kind introduction. Quite inaccurate, quite a lot of it, but I have known your family for quite a long time, and I've known Kevin, as I'd say, since his birth, and can advise you his father Alistair, as well as being a dentist, was a member of the Magic Circle, and his pièce de résistance was sawing people in half. And in the early days when he was practicing, he used the services of Kevin's siblings. As a result, he now has 2 half brothers and 2 half sisters. And It's nice to see you all in one piece, Kevin, tonight. When great people in history are born, it's usually attached to a phenomenon. When Christ was born, there was a bright star in the east, a phenomenon. When Robert Burns was born, there was a tremendous tempest and storm that blew the gable end in of his house, and that was a phenomenon. When Benito Mussolini was born, there was a great volcanic eruption, again a phenomenon. When Gandhi was born, there was a total eclipse of the sun, another phenomenon. When President Peter Good was born, I can tell you it was a wee bit wet in the morning. And cleared up by lunchtime. So here goes my immortal memory. We have other poets, other writers, and other heroes, yet we do not afford them the veneration that we afford to Robert Burns. Perhaps more importantly, why should other nations and other people celebrate the birth of a Scottish poet? And why are these celebrations so unique? The English of Shakespeare, the Irish of Joyce, the Americans of Longfellow, and the Italians of Dante, and the Persians of Omar Khayyam. Every one of them internationally renowned and respected figures, but to none of them is paid the homage that is paid to Burns, even in their own country, let alone abroad. There's no Shakespeare supper or Joyce junket, Longfellow lunch or Dante dinner, not even a Khayyam curry night. There is no international acclaim for any of these writers, great though they may be. Yet Burns is universally acclaimed in all these countries and many more throughout the world. And why should this be? On the 25th of January of each year, and for many days before and after it, there's not an hour or day and night when a Burns supper's not taking place somewhere on the planet when there's no COVID. And this is to immortalise the life of Robert Burns. Born in Alloway, Ayrshire on the 25th January 1759, and he died in Dumfries on the 21st of July 1796. We celebrate his birth, we don't mark his death. Robin's work is all about life and living, and it celebrates the common man. Maybe this was because one of the wise adages of our ancestors at that time, better be the head of the commonalty than at the tail of the gentry. In the short 37 years, he left a huge impact on the world. Burns' father had left Kincardineshire shortly after the Jacobite Rebellion, and in 1748 arrived in Edinburgh as a gardener with an excellent testimonial. This helped him get employed in landscaping on Edinburgh's Hope Park, which anybody in Scotland knows that's now the Meadows as we know it today, before moving west to Ayrshire, where his reputation as an excellent gardener grew, and he ended up in Alloway, where, whilst working with John Crawford on Doonside, he took a perpetual lease on just over 7 acres of land, hoping to establish a market garden. And some years later to tenant Mount Oliphant Farm. When Rabbie was 6, his father and some neighbours established a school in the village, and they had a teacher, a John Murdoch, for all the families. Robert and his brother Gilbert attended the school, but the teacher left 2 years later, leaving the boy's father to continue their education. Pa Burns held that the three most important things on a boy's life were education, education, and education, and the most important of these being education. The farm of Mount Oliphant was hard work, and in taking his share and effort to make it succeed, the future poet seems to have seriously overexerted himself, which later in life assisted in his demise. If that happened today, he would have been successfully treated on the NHS. And as an example, 18 months ago, I ended up in the cardiology unit at Ninewells Hospital, and this was caused by deafness. This was after a visit to my GP earlier in the year, and I thought he told me to get a hot mama and be cheerful, which I did. In actual fact, he told me I had a heart murmur and be careful, which I wasn't. The treatment I got there was fantastic. I have nothing but praise for the doctors and nurses, and they fitted 3 new stents into my heart, but not after first offering me a pacemaker. But at my age, I thought, what was I going to do with a Kenyan runner? I had to spend one night in the AMU ward because I went in as an outpatient, and the old ward 15 at Ninewells was for general admissions, and there were some really sad patients there. And one patient in particular, he had allegedly, I say that kindly, he had allegedly sat on a vacuum cleaner attachment. And it wasn't funny because I got lodged on the wrong thread in his nether regions and it couldn't be removed. And in the morning, one of his family phoned up and phoned the ward to find out how he was doing, to be told by the nurse he was picking up nicely. Returning to the bar, the age 21, Robert and Gilbert, with other young lads in Tarbolton, founded the Tarbolton Bachelors Club. It was founded on diversion to relieve the wearied man worn down by the necessary labours of life. Robert was elected its first president, and at the first meeting drew up the rules for membership, one of which that said that every man proper for a member of this society must have a frank, honest, open heart, and must be a professed lover of more than one of the female sex. Now I say to you, one or more of the female sex. I now find it hard enough to keep one woman happy. In fact, I know every morning I do something that annoys my current wife. I'm waking up. 3 years ago when we got married, at first we were very happy, then things took a turn for the worst. It was on the way back from the reception. And I really know she would divorce me because she's listening to this, if she could find a way without making me happy. But back to Burns. His father died in 1784, and with his brother Gilbert, the poet rented the farm of Mossgiel near Mauchline, but this was unsuccessful. The next year, his first child, a girl, was born to his mother's serving girl, Betty Peyton. The same year he met Jean Armour, a Mauchline belle of whom he wrote. Miss Miller is fine, Miss Markland's divine, Miss Smith she is wit, and Miss Betty is braw, but there's beauty and fortune to get with Miss Morton, but Armour's the jewel for me of them all. He had an intimate affair with his jewel Jean Armour, for which he was censured by the Kirk Session, and as a result had to spend some time standing on the cutty stool in front of the congregation, and he was named as a fornicator. I should add that's considerably less painful and expensive and less expensive than a divorce, but sadly nowadays we don't get that choice. Burns, like me, was a regular churchgoer, and he wrote a poem of picking a louse off a woman's Sunday bonnet in church, and I had a similar experience as a child and ended up going home to my father with a black eye, and he asked me what had happened, and I said I was sitting in the church, and at the first hymn, the woman in the pew in front of me stood up and she had a lovely Sunday dress on, and it got caught between the cheeks of her bottom. So I leant forward and I pulled it out, and she turned around and she belted me. So the next Sunday I returned home and my other eye was blackened, and my father said, "For goodness sake, what happened this week?" He said, "Well, Dad, you won't believe it, but I was in the same seat, same lady in front of me, and she was wearing the same lovely Sunday dress. And when she got up to stand up at the first hymn again, her dress was caught between the cheeks of her bottom, and the wee boy next to me went and pulled it out, but I knew she didn't like it out, so I put it back in again." As Burns said in his last verse of To a Louse, "Oh, wad some powers the gift to gie us, to see ourselves as others see us, and would frae mony a blunder free us, and foolish notion, what airs and dress and gait would lead us, and e'en devotion." But my problems were nothing compared with Rabbie as a result of his farming misfortunes and the attempts of Jean's father to overthrow his common law marriage. And in 1786, he decided to emigrate, taking a job as an overseer on a slave plantation in Jamaica. In order to raise money for this passage, he had published in Kilmarnock a volume of his poems, which he had been composing over several years. This volume was unexpectedly successful, so much so that instead of sailing off to the West Indies, he went to Edinburgh. And during the winter, he was the chief literary celebrity of the season. Another enlarged edition of his poems were published a year later, and the money helped him not only assist his brother in Mosgiel Farm, but also to take in stock for himself the farm of Ellisland in Dumfriesshire. By birth and temperament, he was the right man in the right place at the right time, and this is proved by the unique extent to which his productions have passed into life and the feeling of our nation. He gave up an Ellisland farm in 1791, and a year later he was appointed an exciseman in Dumfries. He was well paid at £50 per annum, which was a lot of money in these days, but because he was very unpopular and despised by many for collecting taxes, he became very discouraged. His work was mere drudgery, and his tendency to take his relaxation in debauchery, a bit like Kevin Stewart, increased the weakness of his constitution early undermined. Nothing changes. In Rabbie's time, the English had by then recognised the Scots were a warlike race, and in their own sly, sleek way, recruited the Scots into their army. Oh, why the deuce should I repine? I'll be an ill foreboder, and 23 and 5'9", I'll go and be a soldier. Robert Burns was a private in the Royal Dumfries Volunteers. So where does Robert Burns fit into the military tradition? He enters it a few decades after the Jacobite Rebellion, during a busy time of regiment building, to the very real invasion threat from France. And speaking of the Jacobite Rebellion, I told the story at a supper many years ago, the story that we were all told at school about Bonnie Prince Charlie in 1746, fleeing from Culloden, and with the help of Flora MacDonald, he escaped over the sea to Skye. This was in fact untrue. He died on the battlefield, and in order to keep up the morale of his followers, they hid his body and built it into a dry stone dyke. That's a stone dyke for the English, or a stone wall for the English people. This is supported by the song Bonnie Charlie's New Awa. Now, Kevin Stewart was most impressed with his knowledge, and I heard him relate my tale to friends at a table meeting a few years later, and he said that when we were at school, we were told about Bonnie Prince Charlie in 1746, fleeing from Culloden, and with the help of Flora MacDonald, he escaped over the sea to Skye. This was in fact untrue. He died on the battlefield, and in order to hide this from the English, they hid him and built him into a dry stone dyke, and this is supported by the song He's No Awa to Bide Awa. In 1796, Burns' health deteriorated, and he even tried bathing in the Solway and drinking from foul-tasting springs as recommended remedies, which ended up accelerating rather than slowing down his demise. On the 21st of July, Burns passed away. He was buried with full military honours on the 25th of July. His son Maxwell was born of Jean Armour the same day. 10,000 people reputedly attended his funeral. If you take the population at the time of Dumfries as only being 5,000 people, people must have travelled for days to attend, and there was no motorways or cars in these days, so it was quite a tribute. During his life, Rabbie was a humorist, a satirist, a storyteller, a lover, a socialist, a nationalist, and a philosopher. He could be romantic, charming, funny, sarcastic, and had devastating wit. Hypocrisy and the pompous were often his targets. His life and work can still be seen as a series of contradictions, some of which are easy to understand, others less so, because times were so different then. About some of the contradictions in the man, at times he was a lover, and at others he was a lecher. At times he was romantic, and other times he was a realist. He was a nationalist, and he was also an internationalist. But were Burns to be alive today, the media would have a field day taking him to task over these contradictions. However, even in the context of today, I see Burns something that was dignified and honest. He had a kind of honesty that marked him out, and he expressed it beautifully in his epistle to John Laprake. I winna blaw about mysel, as ill I like my faults to tell, but friends and folk that wish me well, they sometimes ruse me. Aye, there's a wee fault that whiles lay to me, I like the lassies, good forgive me, for many's a plack they wheedle frae me, at dance or fair. Maybe some other things they gie me, they well can spare. Yes, they well can spare them. Yes, a serial womanizer. When I think of Burns, I think of the man's genius, his ability to paint beautiful pictures with words, with a wonderful command of language, no doubt nurtured by his appetite for quality literature, having had the basics of grammar, spelling, etc., drummed into him by Mr. Murdoch and his father. He also had a great wisdom, which did not belong to a young man, but is more the preserve of one who reached 80 years and 10. To the contrast which I mentioned earlier, the lecturer's side of Burns is shown clearly in many of his letters, as shown in the Merry Muses, where he used unusual obstetric and gynecological terms. And he used some as it was written in the libel summons, and here are just some of them. First you, John Brown, there's witness born, an affidavit made and worn, that you've bred a hurly burly, but Jeannie Mitchell's tirly whirly, and blustered at a regulator, till our wheels gang clitter clattle. Next, Sandy Brown, you're here indicted, to have publicly you've fighted, been clandestinely upward whirling the petticoats of Maggie Borland, and gain her canister a rattle, that months to come it wouldna settle. Now, one has only got to visit any city centre in Scotland to see lasses suffering from canister rattling, and others whose regulators have been well and truly blustered, especially in Dundee. However, I would rather speak of the romantic side of the lover. This is so evident in many of his letters, his reworking of old songs, and of course, his own songs and poems. The poem which sums it all up is, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. And in the third verse he says, till the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. What brilliant writing, and you'd expect him to get his leg over after that. And I remember penning an equally elegant verse, but it didn't seem to work for me. Maybe you'll know why I don't. I penned, we lay down by the bonny banks, my hand was all a quiver, I undid her suspender belt, and her leg fell in the river. But Burns gets a claim for, flow gently, sweet Afton, among the green braes, flow gently, sweet river, the theme of my lays. My Mary's asleep by the murmuring stream, flow gently, sweet Afton, disturb not her dream. And I get mocked for, Mary, Mary out in the river, sailing along up the Carse, she fell in the drink and started to sink, and the water came up to her ankles. Now, I accept it's prose, but it would have been poetry if the tide had been in. No justice, I say, but Burns did mention me in verse. He said, as Father Adam once was fooled, a case that's still too common. Here stands a man, a woman ruled, and the devil ruled the woman, and still does. What is less well known is the music related to some of Burns' songs was in conjunction with some great composers, Beethoven, Haydn, and Mendelssohn, to name but a few. And again, amazing involvement over 200 years ago. The same romantic was a conservationist long before conservation and the Green Party came along. This romanticism is mixed with realism in the poem To a Mouse, excuse me, where he starts in broad Scots This is really unbelievable. We sleek at Cowan, Timmer's beastie. Oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou needna start a wassy hasty wi' bricker and brattle. And then with a flick of his switch into perfect English. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has ruined nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion that makes me startle. And then back to the contrast again, the nationalists and internationalists. The internationalists produced a world-class, indeed world-renowned statement, sung so beautifully by Sheena Wellington to launch the Scottish Parliament. Then let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the degree for all that. For all that and all that, it's coming yet for all that man to one the world o'er shall brothers be for all that. And are we any nearer to achieving that today? I think we are, but we have a few miles still to go. But we have to be on our guard against people like, I remember the dishonest tourist, I think he had actually come from England. He went to a restaurant in Edinburgh, he ordered haggis and he paid for it and he sneaked out without eating it. A few years ago, I was asked to speak at a very large international Burns night in Edinburgh, and seated next to me was a very, very, very large African dignitary. I can say in my table days, I once spoke on the same bill as Cyril Smith and Stoke-on-Trent, but this guy was bigger than Cyril Smith and he dwarfed me. And after the meal, he asked me what I was doing, and I said that I was going to be toasting the lasses, to which he said to me, David, I couldn't eat another thing. Speaking of the lasses, Burns would agree, we Scots and big Scots too can always count on the lasses to bring colour, charm and elegance, not only to suppers such as this, but to our various homes. I'm certain all married men know what it means these days to come home to a kiss. It means you're in their own bloody house, that's what it means. But at this stage, I'd like to thank the 41 Club for inviting me all be into your homes on the Zoom platform. I took the risk of adding in some humour to this immortal memory, and if I've upset anyone, then a purist, I apologise unreservedly. And as an aside, I was once told by an old 41 Club, laughing at your own mistakes lengthens your life, whereas laughing at your wife's mistakes shortens it. So I tell you to enjoy life and only laugh at your own. I'll conclude with a few, this is my own verse, to précis my thoughts about the great Rabbie Burns, and with apologies to Bard. And I trust the English 41ers will understand some of this because it will be in broad Scots. When I was asked to speak tonight, it made me pause, it gave me fright. To talk to punters on their bard, an awesome task and awfully hard. But yin she make the promise rash, honour insists she must be brash. And kid them on, ye ken Burns mair than they themselves I hardly dare. He observed folks' faults and foibles, he wrote them down in hamely jingles. He wrote of mice and men and women, he wrote on vanity and sinning. He wrote about a drunk named Tam, he wrote many a lovesick sang. He wrote on poverty and riches, twa dogs and several bitches, on every subject neath the sun, oft time serious but wrapped in fun. To 124 years have passed since our dear Rabbie breathed his last, but memory of him lives on, immortalised in verse and song. And every year around this time, we gather here and talk and rhyme about this lad who died long since, and each sheep's innards spiced and minced. He could have been French or Chinese, thank God he wasn't one of these. For Aberdeen and even worse, for with a Doric we'd be cursed. But no, he grew up down by ear, amongst honest lads and lassies fair. His words when spoken or when sung, help keep alive the old Scots tongue. He left us this supper every year, usually happy to brave the cold nicht air. For where the country folk we gather to drink and sing and even blether, and listen to works full of wonder, of wisdom, laughter, love, and thunder. Some might think this verse isn't much fun, but at least it rhymes with 41. So raise your glasses, yin and ah, and drink a toast to the one they ca, the plume and poet, to none but he, to Robert Burns, his immortal memory. Yes, Robert Burns, you are indeed immortal. Thank you for the memory. Immortal memory of Robert Burns, everybody. Cheers.
Well said.
Immortal memory. Thank you, Dave. That was absolutely brilliant.
Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Well done.
Thank you.
Very good indeed. Very good.
We'll have another 5-minute comfort break. Just chat amongst yourselves, and then we'll move on to the next.
Right, okay, you want the...
Yeah.
You're going to bring it over?
I think I'll have a couple of things.
Go on, go and do it then. Go and do that. Yeah.
Stop for cheese biscuits.
Very good. Can we do a
Hello, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Hi,
Peter.
Take wine with everybody on the call.
Where's the iron brew? Right.
No.
It's full sugar iron brew.
It's going to ones that make the most noise.
More solid now. A bit dumber.
I put that in brackets and riffraff and emeritus.
Riffraff and
In brackets.
riffraff.
Dunstable.
Riffraff.
Please.
No, just.
Tony, Dunstable.
Spell it, Tony.
How many of you?
Loads of people have turned their video up there.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Hi, Colin. Hi, Larry.
Hello.
Or Jane.
Larry on here.
Hi, Larry.
Good evening, everybody. Who was that? Hello, Larry.
Hello, Larry.
Everybody says hello, Larry.
Did you enjoy your meal, Jeff?
Very much.
Really good. I didn't know that Liverpudlian Scots.
Hi, John. Good to see you've dressed for the occasion, Jeff.
Well, that's very nice. I like to keep standards up.
Very good, Jeff.
Hi, Doggy. Hi.
Douglas breaking up.
Sunny Cyprus.
He's all right.
Just put your family written and then you will see lots more people.
No. You've got to make. Oh, blimey.
None of the children's
I'm a latte.
There's Alan and Jesse.
Hi, Douglas.
Hi, Alan.
Got your phone in. I can take
Brian.
Hi, Jim, Vicky. Patty.
Hi, Jeff.
Richard, Margaret.
Douglas, where's Harry?
Where's Harry?
Yeah.
Please sit.
Harry was there
Popped
earlier.
up a couple of times.
Haven't seen him.
There's Dave. Frank's down here.
Hi,
Dave.
We'll find out.
Where's Bill and Sandra? Hi, Sandra.
Never mind.
Hiya.
Oh, that's good, Dan.
Hello, Alan and Jackie.
Hello, Paul and Peter.
Oh, I see.
Hi, Donna Margaret. You on my screen now?
Yes.
He was the organizer. He was in the age group. I was on his 20
Hello, Martin and Philippa. No, it's got to be loud.
Hello, Don.
Hello. Good health.
There's Jill. Hi, Jill.
Lovely to see you.
Is it empty?
No. Bob and Sally again.
No, maybe Rick Hodges or.
No.
Margaret again there.
How are you, Bob and Sally? How are you?
It was 150.
Well, there's Ingles. Well, there's Bill. There's Bill Collier.
Say that again. Big.
Moving on.
We've enjoyed it so much we decided to become Scottish from the Mac Morgans.
John's on screen now.
You all right? Moving on.
Moving on.
Ronnie Pete. Hi, Andy and Antoinette.
All right, everyone.
Ronnie Pete.
Scott's on the job.
Hi, John.
Hello, Dave.
All right.
Yeah, good. Good to see you. How is Ronnie?
Fine.
Where's Mr. Royal?
He celebrated last night.
Oh, I leave it. I'm
Quite rightly too.
John Bill.
I'm not enjoying it tonight, though.
He said he might do, but he obviously hasn't. I spoke to him earlier.
Mr. Birchall was going to join us, but I'm not sure where he is. I haven't seen him yet.
No, I've not seen him.
Anybody else?
Oh, yes. I don't think so, no.
Seeing me.
You were fine.
Oh, you're late.
Hi, Ian.
We've been here all the time.
I'm sure if you want to Zoom say.
Should be due a fine, Ian. I had the Aggies before it's piped in.
Martin White, did you not get the dress code, Ben?
As a man, he looks well dressed up. Some of us have made an effort.
Laura's got a bow tie on, Jeff.
Yes, I have.
Oh, yeah.
Where's Ronnie Pete?
You know.
No problem.
Louder. Fingers to mute. Passwords on the screen. I hit my own picture first.
I don't mute them.
You never figure out how to find it
And then you'll hear along the top.
Hi, Doreen, Kevin.
Oh, Kevin.
I just did it and you just opened it.
What are the Sonnies?
Just crazy.
Hello, Alan. You look like a pair of cocks.
We can hear you, I can't see you yet.
You ready?
Be on here.
It's funny now. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a bit of
Well, that's our turn.
Hey, hi.
That about a line for it.
You don't want to
Yeah,
talk
simple.
about it.
Simple said hi to him.
You're on mute, Kevin.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully everyone can hear me and you're all enjoying our bun supper tonight. So moving on, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Say the next speaker has been again someone who I've known in table for a long time through various conferences I've been involved. He's been involved in. I think Glasgow 2005 was one that sticks in the memory, and a few others as well. Aberdeen, Sir Aviemore in 2015 as well. To do the rendition of Tam O'Shanter and Holy Willie's Prayer, I'd like to introduce you to Mike Daly from Turriff 41 Club. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Kevin. I hope you can hear me nicely. Yeah.
MC is Kevin.
Good. And everyone else too. Good evening, everyone. Right, Tam O'Shanter, one of Robert Burns's best known poems, and I apologise, it's also one of the longer ones. It does include quite a few Scots words and expressions, but even if you don't know them, you'll get the gist of the whole thing. It does include the words cutty sark, which are Scots words simply meaning short shirt. So that's what the sailing ship was named after. That's what the whisky is named after in honour of this poem. I'm not going to give you translations of all the words, that would take all night, but bear in mind when the poem speaks about nappy in Old Scots, that doesn't mean diapers, it means this stuff, ale. And it speaks about the Doon, that's the River Doon, which flowed through Alloway where Burns came from. So, we'll start the poem. When Chapman Billies leave the street, and drouthy neighbours meet, as market days are wearing late and folk begin to tack the gate, while we sit boozing at the nappy and getting fou and unca happy, we think now in the long Scots miles, the mosses, waters, slaps and stiles that lie between us and our hame, where sits our sulky, sullen dame, gathering her brews like gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. This truth found honest Tam O'Shanter, as he for air a night did canter, all dare, wham ne'er a tune surpasses for honest men and bonny lasses. Ah, Tam, hadst thou but been so wise as teen thy ain wife Kate's advice, she told thee weel thou was a skellum, a blethering, blustering, drunken blellum, but fae November till October, a market night thou wasna sober. At ilka melder with a miller thou sat as long as thou had siller, and every nag was cad a shoe on, the smith and thee got roaring fou on. And at the Lord's house, even on Sunday, thou drank with Captain Jean till Monday. She prophesied that late or soon thou would be found deep drowned in Doon, or catched with warlocks in the mirk by Alloway's auld haunted kirk. Ah, gentle dames, it gars me greet to think how many counsels sweet, how many lengthened sage advices the husband for the wife despises. But to our tale. A market night, Tam had got planted unco right, fast by an ingle, bleezing finely, with Raymond Swartz that drank divinely. And at his elbow, Suitor Johnny, his ancient, trusty, drouthy crony. Tam loved him like a very brother. They had been fou for weeks together. The night drave on with songs and clatter, and aye the ale was growing better. The landlady and Tam grew gracious, with secret favours sweet and precious. The suitor told his queerest stories. The landlord's laugh was ready chorus. The storm without might roar and rustle. Tam didna mind the storm a whistle. Care, mad to see a man so happy, he drowned himself among the nappy. Kings may be blessed, but Tam was glorious. O'er a' the ills of life victorious. But pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or like the snow falls on the river, a moment white, then melts forever. Or like the borealis race that flit ere you can point their place, or like the rainbow's lovely form, evanishing amidst the storm. Nae man can tether time nor tide, the hour approaches, Tam man ride. That hour on night's black arch, the keystane, that dreary hour, Tam mounts his beast in, and sick a night he tacks the road in, as ne'er poor sinner was abroad in. The wind blew as 'twould blow its last, the rattling showers rose on the blast, the speedy gleams the darkness swallowed, loud, deep and long the thunder bellowed. That night a child might understand, the devil had business on his hand. Wheel mounted on his grey mare Meg, a better never lifted leg, Tam skelpit on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire, whiles hudding fast his good blue bonnet, whiles crooning o'er some auld Scots sonnet, whiles glowering round with prudent cares, lest bogles catch him unawares. Kirkalloway was drawing nigh, where ghosts and hoolits nightly cry. By this time he was crossed the ford, where in the snow the chapman smored, and past the birks and Micklestane, where drunken Charlie Brack's neck bane, and through the whins aboon the cairn, where hunters found the murdered bairn, and by the thorn beside the well, where Mungo's mother hanged hersel. Before him Doon pours all his floods, the rattling storm roars through the woods, the lightnings flash from pole to pole, near and more near the thunders roll, when, glimmering through the groaning trees, Kirkalloway seemed in a blaze. Through ilka bore the beams were glancing, and loud resounded mirth and dancing. Inspiring bold John Barleycorn, what pleasures thou canst make us scorn. Wi' Tippany, we fear nae evil, wi' Usquaby, we'll face the devil. The swats sae reamed in Tammy's noddle, fair play, Tam cairna deals a boddle. But Maggie stood, right sair astonished, till by the heel and hand admonished, she ventured forward on the light, and wow! Tam saw an unca sight. Warlocks and witches in a dance. Nae cotillion Brent knew for France, but hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys and reels put life and metal in their heels. A winnock bunker in the east, there sat Auld Nick in shape of beast. A towsy tyke, black, grim and large, to give them music was his charge. He screwed the pipes and girt them skirl till roof and rafters had to diddle. Coffins stood round, like open presses, that showed the deed in their last dresses, and by some devilish cantrip slight, each in its cauld had held a light, by which heroic Tam was able to note upon the holy table a murderer's bones and gibbet airns, twa span lang wee unchristened bairns, a thief new cutted for the rape, with his last gasp, oh, his gab did gape. 5 tomahawks with murder crusted, 5 scimitars with blood red rusted, a garter which a babe had strangled, a knife a father's throat had mangled, whom his ain son o' life bereft, the grey hairs yet stuck to the heft. Wi' mair horrible and awful, that even to name would be unlawful. As Tammy glowered, amazed and curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. The piper loud and louder blew, the dancers quick and quicker flew. They reeled, they set, they crossed, they clicked, till Ilka, Carlin, swat and reek it, and coosed their daddies to the work, and linked at it in her sark. Now Tam, had they been queens, plump and strapping in their teens, their sarks instead of creashy flannin been snaw white 1700 linen. These bricks of mine, my only pair, a teens were plush, a good blue hair, I would have given them off my hardies for a blink of the bonny birdies. But withered beldams, all and droll, rigwoody hags with Spain a foal, louting and flinging on a crummock, I wonder didna turn thy stomach. But Tam knew what was what, fu brawly. There was a winsome wench on Whalley that night, enlisted in the corps. Long after Kent on Carrick shore, for mony a beast to deed she shot, and perished mony a bonny boat, and shook baith mickle corn and beer, and held the countryside in fear. Her cutty sark of Paisley harn, that while a lassie she had worn, in longitude though sorely scanty, it was her best, and she was vaunty. Ah, little kent thy reverend granny, that sark she coughed for her wee nanny with £12 Scots, 'twas a her riches, but here my muse her wingman cower sit flights as far beyond her power to sing how nanny lap and flang, a supple jade she was and strong, and how Tam stood like Ian, like bewitched, and thought as very Ian enriched. But Maggie stood, right, see, I've done that bit, beg your pardon. Thought as very Ian enriched. Even Satan glowered and fidged fu fain, and hotched and blew with might and main, till first might and main, sorry boys, hotched and blew with might and main, till first a caper, sign another. Tam lost his reason altogether, and roars out, "Well done, Cutty Sark!" And in an instant, all was dark. And scarcely had he Maggie rallied, when out the hellish legion sallied. As bees bizz out wi' angry fyke, when plundering herds assail their bike, as open pussy's mortal foes, when pop she starts before their nose, as eager runs the market crowd, when catch the thief resounds aloud. So Maggie runs, the witches follow, with money and eldritch screech and hollow. Ah, Tam, thou'll get thy faring. In hell they'll roast thee like a herring. In vain thy Kate awaits thy coming, soon Kate will be a woeful woman. Now do thy speedy utmost, Meg, and win the key stane o' the brig. Thereat them thou thy tail may toss, a running stream they darena cross. But ere the key stane she could make, the finter tail she had to shake, for Nanny, far before the rest, hard upon noble Maggie pressed, and flew at Tam with furious ettle. But little wist she Maggie's mettle. A spring brought off her master hale, but left behind her ain grey tail. The carlin caught her by the rump, and left poor Maggie scarce a stump. Now, who this tale of truth shall read, ilk man and mother's son take heed. Whene'er to drink you are inclined, or cutty sarks run in your mind, think you may buy the joys are dear. Remember Tam O'Shanter's mare.
Thank you, Mike. Well done.
Well, I don't know, Kevin. I wouldn't give myself very many out of 10 for that one.
No, no.
I hiccuped a bit when I pitched to that there.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, Mike.
Thank you. If you're still willing to put up with something that's a bit shorter, promise you, a lot shorter, I can go ahead with Holy Willie's prayer. It won't take long.
Just before you start, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to drop off. So thank you very much for the evening. It's been really great. So see you soon.
Thanks. Go
ahead, Mike.
Well, let's get rid of the bike.
You're on mute, Mike.
You're on mute.
There you go, Mike. Go on.
Thank you. Thanks. Right. Burns was a believer. He was a member of the Church of Scotland, but he had no time at all for some of the holier-than-thou hypocrites who were elders in the church in those days and were very much part of the do as I say, not as I do brigade. And one of these guys annoyed him intensely more than the others. So Burns wrote this satirical poem about him. It's called Holy Willie's Prayer. O thou that in the heavens dost dwell, why as it pleases best thyself, sends ane to heaven and 10 to hell, for thy glory, and no for any good or ill they've done before thee. I bless and praise thy matchless might, when thousands thou hast left in night, that I am here before thy sight, for gifts and grace, a burning and a shining light to this place. What was I, or my generation, that I should get sick exaltation? I, who deserved most just damnation for broken laws, 6,000 years ere my creation, through Adam's cause. When from my mother's womb I fell, thou mighty plunged me deep in hell, to gnash my gums and weep and wail in burning lakes, where damned devils roar and yell, chained to their stakes. Yet I am here, a chosen sample, to show thy grace is great and ample. I'm here, a pillar of thy temple, strong as a rock, a guide, a buckler, and example to thy flock. And yet, O Lord, confess I must, at times I'm fashed with fleshly lust, and sometimes too in worldly trust vile self gets in. But thou remembers we are dust, defiled with sin. O Lord, yestreen thou kens wi' meg, thy pardon I sincerely beg. O may it ne'er be a living plague to my dishonour, and I'll never lift a lawless leg again upon her. Besides, I further man a vow wi' Leesie's lass 3 times I trow, but Lord, that Friday I was fou when I came near her, or else thou kens thy servant true would never steer her. Maybe thou let's this fleshly thorn buffet thy servant even and morn, lest he o'er high and proud should turn that he's sae gifted. If say thy hand man e'en be born until thou lift it. Lord, bless thy chosen in this place, for here thou hast a chosen race. But God confound their stubborn face and blast their name, who brings thy elders to disgrace and open shame. Lord, mind Peter Good's deserts. He drinks and swears and plays at kerts, and has some money taking herts wi' great and sma. For God's ain priest, the people's herts he steals awa. And when we chastened him therefore, thou kens how he bred sick a splore and set the world in a roar a laughing at us. Curse thou his basket and his store, kale and potatoes. O Lord my God, that glib-tongued Achan, my very heart and flesh are quaking to think how we stood sweating, shaking, and pished with dread, while Stuart, hanging lip and snaking, held up his heed. Lord, in thy day of vengeance try him. Lord, visit him who did employ him, and pass not in thy mercy by them, nor hear their prayer, but for thy people's sake destroy them, and then spare. But Lord, remember me and mine, with mercies temporal and divine, that I for grace and gear may shine excelled by name. And all the glory shall be thine. Amen. Amen.
Amen to all that. Thank you, Mike, for that.
Very good. Yeah.
That was brilliant.
Very good.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, just to allow you to recharge your glasses and just chat, and we'll reconvene. Move on at going to come about 9:05, 4 minutes time, 4 or 5 minutes there approximately.
What's happening in 4 minutes time?
Chatting because you don't know who you are chatting.
In 5 minutes.
He's good, wasn't he?
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't understand an awful lot of what he said. You seem to giggle now and again.
Well, you get just
Very good, Mike.
Cheers,
mate.
Yes.
Cheers. Thankfully, us guys from Lancashire could understand most of it.
Good for you. Yeah.
The borders ain't that far away, and it was fantastic. Really took me back. Now I remember going back to Gibraltar, where they've done some of the best Burns nights, and they raise several £1,000s for charities every single Burns night. And I've been to at least 2 of them. Many of you have been there to Gibraltar to raise money. Fantastic time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So it takes me right back.
I remember the they will live long in the memory.
Yeah, somebody else would you? Explain to that. Maybe it was Drew.
Wonder why, because they're all at home. Bit of mind to finish so late as well.
I take it.
It's yours.
No.
just this one.
We could have a little one.
Mark, what are you up to?
I'll do that. Please.
Probably like Chelsea.
Incredible.
Cheers.
Oh.
What?
What, man?
Oh, gallery view.
Just asking.
Hi, Meg.
We need a knife.
Where are you? Good job. Hi, John. Hi,
Dr. Charles.
Hi, Juice.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
No,
Hi.
I'm not aware of that.
Hi.
Shall I pull do you want to pull the honey over there or not?
Where's Dave, Joe?
I'm just having their cheese.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Dave.
We're live on the Facebook page.
Mean to
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have
There's Margaret again. Hi, Margaret.
Hi. Hi, Douglas.
Going to intrude.
Excellent.
if I can have some, as I say in the Scottish vernacular, if I can have some whoosh, please. We'll move on to the next segment of the evening. And we're now going to move on with the music interlude, and I'd like to reintroduce our piper, Blair Scott. Mark.
Look at that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Blair, for the piping over the evening. I think you'll admit, ladies and gentlemen, the piping has been of absolute excellent standard tonight. So hopefully enjoyed the renditions of the piping that we've had for you tonight. So moving on, it now comes to that time of evening when, if you remember correctly, I said my friend Nessie here was acting as Sergeant of Arms and would be fining anyone who was basically being annoying to throughout the whole evening. So, but of course, there's been a secret Sergeant at Arms hiding someplace in the background. So, Mr. Conway, over to you for dealing out some fines for the night, please. If Mr. Conway is ready.
Good evening, everybody. What an absolutely superb night by the 41 Club Connects team, but I'm afraid they get the first fine of the evening. So everybody involved with the 41 Club Connects team for organising Burns Night, a traditional Scottish event on Australia Day. The second fine goes to Blair Forrest. Now he's disappeared, so Kevin, I'm going to ask you and Nessie if you wouldn't mind catching up with him, but he's going to get a fine for an emotionally distressing magical trick, turning his pet dog into a haggis. And just to let you know that the RSPCA and the Magic Circle have been informed. Kevin Stewart, the Scottish President, also gets a fine for forgetting to unmute. Normally we like to mute him, but on this occasion he has a fine. Barry Derman also gets a fine for cooking a beetroot pancake for lunch and then wearing it tonight. If you want to find Barry, I think you'll realise what I'm talking about. Fiona Bull, the Vice President of Ladies Circle, a fine for you for messaging me privately and suggesting that my background here was Hogwarts Castle and not Edinburgh Castle. There is somebody in the room tonight by the name of Robert Burns, and I'm afraid, Robert, you've got to have a fine for crashing your own party and not buying us all a drink. And for my final fine, I will leave you with your own interpretation of the word suffering. So the fine will go to anybody who suffered burns whilst cooking the haggis tonight. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Jim, for those words and those fines. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance tonight. As I said, this has been the inaugural Burns 41 Club event, and I think, you know, in those times, to bring everybody together on Zoom and to give everyone just a flavour of what we do up here on a normal Burns supper, when we could all meet together, you know, in normal circumstances. At least I hope you've appreciated what a Burns supper is like to us Scots up here. You know, the 25th of January, we go all out to celebrate Burns in no uncertain terms. And as I say, I hope tonight has, in those uncertain times and distressing times, has basically brought a wee bit of sparkle into your life. So I'd like now to hand over to Peter McBride, who is Regional Councillor for Region 24, for the vote of thanks. Peter.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Well, good evening, everybody. I must confess, when we first thought about organising a virtual Burns night, we weren't too sure how it would work out. But I have to say, I think this has been, even though we say it ourselves, has been a fantastic evening. And I do hope you've all enjoyed the evening. There were a few concerns when we first thought about putting it together, but it's gone swimmingly well. And the whole of the event is a bit like looking at a swan on a lake. It looks calm and controlled on the surface, but underneath we're all going 10 at the dozen just to make sure we're going forward. So I'd like, goes without saying that an evening such as this doesn't happen on its own, but I would like to express thanks to all the people who have spoken this evening. So if I thank them all one after the other, perhaps we can give our combined vote of thanks at the end, in our own way at the end after I mention them all. First of all, I'd like to thank Ian Goldie from Troon 41 Club for his excellent reading of the Selkirk Grace, and of course allowing all of us to start eating. We were really waiting for you, Ian, to see that. And the history of the Selkirk Grace is well over 200 years ago. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing it. And also, Kevin, thank you for sharing the vegetarian version of the Selkirk Grace also. A huge thank you to Blair Forrest of Royal Deeside 41 Club for his passionate address and toast to the haggis. I just hope your tabletop was well protected with the way you put that knife and skin do into it. Bit of an introvert. I thought you must try and bring yourself out a little bit more. Mark, Kevin, can you mute everybody and I'll unmute myself?
Yeah, I'm just going to let me mute everybody. Bear with me a minute while I mute everybody.
Okay, cool. We're back in the room. So yeah, Blair, I noticed you're a bit of an introvert, so try and do a bit more to bring yourself out a little bit more. Fantastic reading, really, really good. And great that your dog took center stage as well. I thought that was fantastic. A brilliant rendition, and the way that you operate those knives cutting that haggis, I'm just pleased you're not an NHS surgeon at the moment, but you know, great rendition. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks also to Dave Adams of Dundee 41 Club for his distinguished, witty, hilarious, immortal memory of the bard. What a fantastic. And also thank you for respecting the English bard Shakespeare. But you're right, the English don't celebrate as much as the Scots do, or the Irish do when it comes to St. Patrick's next month. So thanks, a truly entertaining speech, great. And you're right to remind us that we don't celebrate his death, Burns' death. We just celebrate his birthday, which is fantastic. I love the Kenyan pacemaker joke. I'm going to borrow that, steal that with pride. That was brilliant. It was quite clear that you shared your passion with real love of the bard. So thank you so much for doing that. It was absolutely fantastic. Thanks also go to Mike Daly of Turriff 41 Club and the awesome reading of Tam O'Shanter. Just superb, the best reading of Tam O'Shanter I've ever heard. Made me proud to have a surname of McBride. Whether it's Irish or Scottish, I don't know. The tartan behind me is a McBride tartan. It's a McDonald tartan. McBride is a set of the McDonald clan. But thank you for that, Mike. It was superb. And who knew that Cutty Sark meant short shirt? I can't help feeling that if the ship in Greenwich was called HMS Short Shirt, it wouldn't have the reverence that it does have today. So thank you very much for that. Superb. And throughout the evening, we've been blessed with the pipes from Blair Scott. Superb playing. And I was so impressed that his stag design lampshade matched his wallpaper. Absolutely superb. Really impressive piping and just a pleasure to listen to. And also thanks to our unofficial 41 Club President of Scotland and MOC for this evening, Kevin Stewart. He reckons he's a truly patriotic Scot because he burns supper every night, he tells me. But thank you, Kevin, for your holding this evening together. It was actually, as you say, it was calm and collected on the surface, but we were all running like hell underneath the water. Goes without saying, these events don't happen on their own. Take a lot of planning. And I'd like to thank all the 41 Connects committee, not just for tonight, but all the events we're putting on week after week for our members to take place and join in these very challenging times. Special thanks this evening to Mark House, our webmaster and Region 18 National Councillor, who in addition to managing all the technology tonight, also organised, and very many of us who ordered haggis, ordered Burns Night suppers online and were delivered to us. And I have to say, the quality of the food was absolutely sublime, really, really good. Mark is known by his friends as the Exorcist. And the reason apparently, because when he visits them, all their spirits disappear. It's really weird. So thank you for tonight, Mark. The food was top notch. And finally, a big thank you to everybody who's here this evening. It obviously wouldn't be the same without you all. And in these challenging times, what a fantastic evening we've had tonight. And it was just, I can't express how fantastic I thought the evening was. And thank you for everybody for turning in. And we hope to see you at a future event. But if I can ask you all to thank those speakers in the usual style, and perhaps we'll raise another glass of whiskey to them. Slandivar.
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 Congratulations on a brilliant night.
Well done, guys.
Brilliant night. Well done, everybody.
Peter, for that,
Great night.
for that wonderful time.
Very good.
Mark House, are you ready to go with
Nice guy, isn't he? Reply.
Hello, Tony and Linda.
Our message doesn't come up yet, is it?
Cheers.
ready to go?
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, but it hasn't come up on
Yeah. I thought
Where's on Zoom?
Organising this, wasn't it? Not so much, but you get
Christmas on ladies first because they're on their own back.
Well, the guy who's
more risky because you wanted to leave some for Ron.
Because nobody can see anything. So they'll just clean it, basically.
Right, are we going to?
Yeah, good job, well done.
Thank you all. What a super evening.
Thank you for your attendance tonight. Thank you, Peter. I'd like us to give this final toast to everyone tonight in true Scots style. Langevar.
Well done.
Good job, well done.
Thanks, Blair.
Club World when we eventually get back to some normality going forward.
Yep.
Press the leave button.
Well done, Kevin.
Press the leave button.
Well done, Kevin.
Well done, everybody.
Well done, everybody.
Well done to our new Scottish